because one thing that really stayed with me is that regardless, rich, poor, old, young, everyone just wants to be appreciated.
Yes, yes. And everybody just wants to be safe. Welcome to another episode of Most Memorable Journeys. Today's guest is actually living in the same town as I am. And up until about a week ago, I didn't know that she exists. And once I started to read about her, I just started to like her more and more and more. She is currently the marketing manager at Harness Fiduciary, but she has a very, very fascinating past that I want to talk with her about. Welcome to Most Memorable Journeys, Andrea Charalambous.
Elizabeth, thank you so much for that really wonderful welcome. It's a pleasure to be here today with you. And I'm just really excited for us to just have this conversation.
So am I. And you, of course, one of the main reasons that I think you were introduced to me by somebody. I don't remember how it all happened.
That's right. This is where I really think that life has a strange, funny, extraordinary way of working, because one of my friends, actually one of my brother's very good friends, had reached out to me and said, I've reached out to Elizabeth and recommended you. And I'm like, okay, brilliant. This
Who's
sounds
Elizabeth?
I'm like, yeah, brilliant. I've never heard of her, but let's let's do this. And then I'm like, oh, Elizabeth sounds really interesting. I'd love to have a chat with her.
That's great. So I read 70 countries. And of course, one of the main reasons why it is 70 countries is because you worked as a flight attendant for Emirates Airlines. Are the 70 countries other travels, or is it mostly because of Emirates?
Mostly because of Emirates. What I did was, apart from the trips that I would go for flights, I'd use my time off and again travel again with family and friends. So I would say the traveling sort of started when I was a young girl, because I was born in London. Then when I was about 4 or 5, my family decided to move to Cyprus. My mum's English Cypriot, my dad's Cypriot, and I think they felt that they were able to give me and my brother a better standard of living, upbringing here in Cyprus, which I think they did a great, they had a great choice in doing that. But then we'd always visit London, go and see family. So just, getting on an airplane was always fascinating. And then I think what happened was, when I finished university, my background is in psychology. So I did my degree in psychology. I did my undergraduate, and then I did my master's in child development in King's College in London. And I came back to Cyprus, sort of raring to get into psychology. And this was 2012. And it was just a bad time. The crisis started to pick up. You could feel the vibe and the energy in Cyprus about 2012 was just, you just felt like an element of a depression going around. People weren't getting jobs. Young people weren't able to get the jobs that they wanted. And in my case, unfortunately or fortunately, depends how you see it, I wasn't able to get into the profession of psychology because they changed the law of the psychology in Cyprus. So they no longer recognize masters that lasted for a year. So it meant for me to be qualified and for me to actually practice, I needed to do a second master's, which had a duration of 2 years. So I'm 21 years old, come back to Cyprus, full of life, ready, having to be told, well, you can't actually practice what you wanted to do. So you have a choice of doing another master's for another 2 years or doing something different. And I decided I'm not ready to study again after all those years. And I got into marketing, actually. And I enjoyed it because I realized that I could apply psychology into marketing in understanding, consumers, understanding how people buy. And that was great. But it was such a short period because, like I mentioned, the climate here was just low. It just felt I can't explain it in another way, like low and heavy. And I had a friend, a friend who had told me, I'm going to an open day to Emirates. Would you like to come? And Lana come. I was literally thinking, I've never heard of this airline, like vaguely, who are they? And then I looked at their website and I'm like, Mauritius, Maldives, New York. I'm like, okay, they travel all over. let's go. There's nothing, have nothing to lose. And because I like to travel anyway, that year I had done 2 amazing trips to the US where I was around Miami, New Orleans, Texas, road tripping, which was fantastic. And then the same year I had gone to Uganda for a month and spent time working at a charity there, at a school. So it was, like you said, when you've got that bug in you, it's almost like subconsciously you look for ways to stimulate it even more. So when I saw Emirates and that they were looking for air hostess, cabin crew, I'm like, well, let's just go. There's nothing to lose. So I went, not really thinking a lot about it. Went through all the stages and they had said, well, we will let you know in about a month. 2 months went by. So I just figured like, okay, I didn't get it. That's no issue. And then I get a call and they were like, Mrs. Charalambous. But the way they pronounced my surname was just hilarious. Like they had a good guess at it, but they tried their best. And they said, well, you've got the job. You're coming in November. And I was taken aback. I didn't expect I would get it. And I think what makes this story quite interesting is that the reaction of my parents, especially my dad. So my dad's a very typical Cypriot in the sense that he wanted his kids to have a good education, to study, to get good jobs and to do well, which I think most parents want that anyway. So when I told him, well, actually, I've gotten the job, I'm going to the UAE to work, he was just like, well, you're not going. That was it. There was no question about it. And he's like, no, you're not going. Why are you discussing it? And so it was funny because I didn't listen to him. And I put my foot down and I said, I'm going to try it out. If I don't like it, I'll just hop back on the plane back to Cyprus. And that's that.
Absolutely. I want to interrupt you here because I have a few questions to what you said so far. You know, like you mentioned Uganda. I want to go back to that. Why Uganda? Was that, how did that happen? And what did you think of Uganda?
I loved Uganda. Uganda has still a very special place in my heart. Why Uganda? So at the time, I had a friend who his uncle lived in Uganda. And we were discussing the trip that he was planning to go. He was planning to spend some time at his uncle's coffee plantation, but also his uncle helps support blind and deaf school. And it was always, I think about 21. Yes. So it was always my goal that I wanted to discover Africa. I hadn't been. So I was like, I really want to come as well. And then another friend of ours got really excited as well. So the 3 of us went to Uganda for practically a month. And I think that was biggest shock to my system coming back then to Cyprus and realizing how people with so little can have so much joy in their heart. It was
an eye-opener.
Mm-hmm. You've actually made me remember one story. And so we were with the kids at the school. We were teaching them different lessons. There's so much love from children. You just realize that how we start off as children, so pure, so non-judgmental, non-critical, and how we change when we get into society.
Well, we get conditioned, don't we? We get taught to become racists. We get taught to become, I don't know, whatever else. We are not born like that.
Definitely not. We are definitely not born that way. And I think that's what it that really taught me that lesson, that there's a purity in each of us. And what happened was one day, so again, most of the children, just to give you some context, were HIV positive. There's a huge rate of HIV in Uganda. So the majority of these kids had HIV. They were HIV positive. They were deaf. Some of them were deaf. Some of them were deaf and blind. Some of them had all these different illnesses, let's say difficulties. And there was one specific girl I remember, and I knew she was pretty sick. She was really sick. And she was so sweet. And she saw me and she saw that I had a mosquito bite on my arm, like a little spot. You could barely see it. And she reacted in such a way that, oh my goodness, like, how are you okay? Have you seen it? And that was the biggest irony, was that this girl had so many things against her health-wise. And she saw this small thing on me and was so caring.
Cared about you. Yeah. Amazing. Yeah, we can learn. I mean, that's the thing. And that's why we have to leave this island and see the world. And I think that's what you did. Another question or another remark that I want to make is, you went to study psychology, obviously, for a reason. So you chose it, and then you actually came back and you realized that you won't be able to do it the way you were thinking about doing it. Were you disappointed at that moment?
Very, very disappointed, because I think when you decide to study something, you really do try to choose something that you love. And I was always fascinated with psychology. I was always wanting to understand the mind. Why do people act the way they do? Interactions, what affects us? So studying it for 3 years was fascinating. And then obviously doing my master's, which that master's was really interesting because it was like a fusion between child psychology, children's rights, safeguarding children. And it was all this umbrella of just understanding about children. So I came back wanting to get into that and I couldn't. So I felt really disappointed, demotivated, and a bit let down, I guess, by the system here. And so I think so it plays a role how your character is. And I'm not really one to dwell on things for a long time. Like I'll sort of see, okay, there must be a reason. Looking at the time, it was hard to see, but looking back, there was a reason why things happened that way.
Yes, a good one. But at the moment when it happens, you don't really know, do you? But I think you are a good example. My son studied psychology in Switzerland. He's younger, but you're a good example of being flexible and understanding that psychology is our life. All our life is about psychology, and you can do so much with that. And I am sure it made you a much better flight attendant. So how did you convince your dad?
I just told him, you can say whatever you want. I'm going to go. I think what I understood now that I'm a parent. So I recently had a child. My daughter's 8 months now. So thank you. So I do understand the element of wanting what's best for your child, even if your child is 20 or 10 or 30. I understand that doesn't really change in terms of age. You want the best. You want them to be safe. You want them to be loved and be able to live their best life. So I think when I had told my dad, look, I put everything on the table. I have nothing holding me in Cyprus right now. It's not like I'm married. It's not like I have children. It's not like I have a solid job that I'm going to get up and I literally have nothing here. So I'm going to go and try it out. And if I don't like it, I will come back. He felt that I did the right thing was after a few months that I had gone, or maybe it was 6 months, both my parents came and visited me. And I remember sitting in a restaurant in Dubai and he was like, you did the right thing. Because he could see.
That's sweet. Yeah. You didn't know Dubai either. Had you been to Dubai before?
So I'll tell you something, Elizabeth. And again, this is for me a big realization. Like the universe just keeps on giving to you. This is my take. Yes. So before, on my way to Uganda, we did a stop in Dubai and we were there for a night. And I remember standing where the dancing fountains were and saying to my friend, I don't know when, I don't know how, but one day I'm going to live here.
Be careful what you wish for.
I know. We always have to be specific. So I had only gotten a taste of Dubai, but there was a magic for me. And don't forget, I was 22. And I think at 22, living in Dubai is just so appealing. And it was for many years my home. It was my second home. And living there, it just has a vibe about it. It's so fun. It's so bright. There's just things constantly happening. But you had that as your base, but you knew you could just get up and go so often.
So let's start from the beginning. I've had a couple of flight attendants on my podcast, but nobody from Emirates so far. They do train you very well, don't they?
I would say that the training that I got in Emirates, and I said this to my friends after, so I did a degree and I did a master's. The 2 months that we did in training college was grueling. It was worse than my master's at King's College, not because it was necessarily hard, But it was so much information on at a short period of time that you had to learn, understand, and then put it in practice on the same day. And every day was a pure scenario of making sure that you were able to carry out what would happen in an aircraft. So you would learn not only first aid, you would learn security, safety, service as well. And you'd have all those forming factors rolled into scenarios every day. And I just remember thinking, this is a lot. So you'd go there at 7 o'clock in the morning. You wouldn't leave till about 7 o'clock at night. And then you'd go home and study till midnight because you needed to make sure you knew everything for the next day. And this was the same thing for 2 months. It was intense.
Yeah, and I think the job of a flight attendant is so often misunderstood because the flight attendant, the pilot is responsible to fly the plane safely, but the flight attendants are responsible to keep the cabin safe. It's not just about serving drinks and food. It's about a lot more about, there's so much more behind it than people think there is.
You're 100% right. Even I didn't realize there was so much involved. I mean, I traveled, I saw the flight attendants serve us tea and coffee and snacks. But did I know that there needed to be such an extensive knowledge and experience in terms of what to do when you hear a strange sound or a strange smell, or if someone starts to be rowdy, what they could actually be capable of doing? No, I had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
And it isn't until you do the training that you realize, wow, these individuals who are there and are there on long flights as well, and they get tired like everyone else, still have to be fully alert and on top of things because they could be the ones that ultimately might save your life.
Yeah, we'll talk about the rowdy ones later. But and the thing about Emirates is that you do have lots of very, very long flights. That's that's much more challenging than just 3-4 hours. Now, do you remember where your first flight went to?
Yeah, we went to Singapore. That was my first layover as well. I think we were there for either 1 or 2 days, and it was just phenomenal. You can imagine.
How did you feel? You know what? I have to tell you something. All my life, I've always wanted to be a flight attendant. I applied for Swiss Air at the time when I was young, and they didn't want me because at the time everybody wanted to be a flight attendant. And then I went actually for an interview at Lufthansa many years later after I had been a tour guide, and they told me that I was overqualified. So then I gave up, but I still want to be a flight attendant. So how did you feel when you put on that beautiful uniform for the first time and you flew to Singapore?
I think Emirates does such a wonderful job in marketing their image. I have to say that obviously from a marketing side and a brand perspective now, they really, really make it so appealing to you to really want to put that uniform on. You can't wait till the end where you're going to be given that hat and they're going to tell you what shades of red lipsticks you're going to wear, because you can't just wear anything. Everything is to the T. You're told the way that to do your makeup, your nails, your hair. There was a sense of glamour. I won't deny it.
Of course. That's why I still want to be a flight attendant.
Don't give up, Elizabeth. Don't give up. Yeah, so I think I remember stepping on the aircraft and just feeling like I was buzzing. I was like, I'm actually doing this.
I love that I can actually feel it. I mean, I was a tour guide and I was on top of the world for 11 years because I just loved it. But tell me, then I think you were there for 5 years. Am I correct?
I was there for 5 years. Yes.
So right. there's kind of a stepping system. You start. How do you start, and then what happened? Because I know that you actually ended up in first class.
That's right. So you start in economy class. Everyone starts in economy class, regardless if you've got experience or not. This is where you're going to begin, and you usually spend, depending on how you get on in terms of if you've gotten good remarks from your manager, from customers, you tend to spend about 1.5 to 2 years in economy class. Then you can apply to go to business class. Then you can apply to go to first class. And then also you have the opportunity to then work as a cabin supervisor as well. So you can be a cabin supervisor for an individual or a purser, which is for the entire flight. So in my 5 years, I worked my way up, and I think that is also something that you learn so much. Just firstly, you do start from the bottom. That's just how it is in life. Mm-hmm. So yeah, so when you
Unless
work
unless you're in Cyprus and you're related to somebody.
we have a different special treatment here on the island. But yeah, if we put that aside, in the
Okay.
real world, in the real world, yeah. Yeah, no, it was very interesting being able to work in all three cabins, because each cabin has gives you a different outlook, because obviously someone who can travel in first class, and we're talking about, I remember at the time, so maybe this is about 6 years ago, that our most expensive ticket was to Sao Paulo, and I think it was something like $12,000 for a flight.
Yeah.
For a flight ticket.
Yeah. It's a little car.
A little car.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So it also means that the service that they expect from you is not average.
Yes.
And I liked that we were so trained to, I think the most important thing is the attention to details. That's what it is, really. That each cabin has their own way of working.
But even though, despite all that, each passenger or customer is important.
100%.
Yeah, yeah. So let's get a little bit into detail. And are there flights that are more difficult than others?
Definitely.
We don't want to offend anybody here. That's not
definitely.
the issue at all. But which would you consider, in your experience with Emirates, which are the most challenging flights?
Firstly, I can answer this question on like a twofold. Challenging flights, just by default, are the ones that are night flights, early morning flights. From a physical perspective, you try to rest before a flight, but let's be realistic. You're hardly going to sleep well when you know you have to wake up at 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 10 o'clock in the evening to do these flights. So even if the passengers are amazing, you are struggling to stay awake for those hours, especially if you're doing our longest flight. At least it was until I left, was 17 and a half hours to New Zealand. Yeah. Yes, you get a break on that flight. You do. I think we probably slept.
But do you actually sleep on that break?
I think it depends on what your sleep is like as an individual. I have the gift of switching off when I need to.
Yeah, that's
so
good. Yeah,
I could literally go into that and be like, right, Andrea, you're out. And someone would tap me and be like, it's your time to get up. I've always been a good sleeper, and I think it helps to do a job like that. Otherwise, you struggle. You struggle throughout. Jet lag is real.
Yeah, of course.
So I would say that on the one hand, yeah, challenging flights are also flights where don't forget Emirates. What a lot of people forget is that Emirates might be a multi-billion-dollar airline that flies to all these fantastic places, luxury places, but it's also an airline. It's so successful because it flies to places that a lot of other airlines don't fly to.
Yeah.
So we're talking about countries that are not so economically developed, which are poor. So doing flights to those countries have been very challenging, because I remember a lot of people didn't even know we had toilets on board.
Yeah. I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
You probably saw that as well, maybe when you did your job as well as a tour guide.
Of course. And you end up understanding a lot. I think all these things just make you much more open to understanding different cultures. I think that is the beauty of what you did and I did. And also deep down, though, at the end of the day, then still understanding that we all have the same needs.
You hit the nail on the head, Elizabeth, because I think one thing I understood from those 5 years in Emirates is that I got to serve presidents, prime ministers. I got to serve the worker that was going to build the new tower in Dubai. It didn't matter who it was, because one thing that really stayed with me is that regardless, rich, poor, old, young, everyone just wants to be appreciated.
Yes, and everybody just wants to be safe. Yes. So talking about those presidents, in your first class, in the time that you were in first class, I don't know if you're allowed to say, but if you are allowed to say, who was the most famous person you served?
The most famous person I served was Brad Pitt.
Oh my God, really?
Sorry, really sorry. Sorry,
That
not
is
sorry.
Amazing. Was he nice?
He was very quiet and to himself, in all honesty.
Okay.
All the cabin crew girls were absolutely going bonkers, as you can imagine. But he just laid low in his suite, didn't really want to be disturbed, very, very subdued. But we were
Totally
like,
understandable. He probably was flying from a job or to a job. So, he was just a passenger who wanted to be quiet, to arrive safe and relax.
Yeah.
Now, you were mentioning the girls within the cabin crew, because I know that I've flown Emirates a few times, and it's always like they announce at the beginning, it's like 27 different nationality and 40 languages. Is that a good thing, or is that a difficult thing? Or how did you see that?
I think I saw it as a good thing, because I think, again, it comes down to character. So I just love to meet people from different places, because I feel like we have something to learn from everyone. And that was one of the main reasons. I'll go back to when I went to university in England. My mindset was, I can't wait to make friends from all over the world. Whereas I know I had a lot of Cypriot acquaintances who I understand, again, there's a sense of security. They went to study in the UK, but they all stuck together. For me, it kind of defeats the purpose of going abroad. Absolutely. Because you sort of come back and you've still got the same mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I remember going to uni and I had 3 close friends that we became roommates. One was Albanian, one was from Iran, one was Indian, Saudi Arabian, and it was me, the Cypriot. And I learned so much from them, whether it was culture, music, food. So the same mindset applied in Emirates. And I think there's nowhere in the world that you will go to a job that you will have such exposure to so many different cultures. Don't get me wrong, it sometimes is challenging to work with those individuals, but then it could be the same, because it can be down to character.
That may not even have something to do with where they come from. That's a character thing, isn't it? There are good and bad people everywhere in the world. That's another thing that we learn when we travel.
Exactly.
So,
that.
Yeah, I understand exactly what you get, but I love what you said, that you can learn something from everyone, everywhere, really, even if it's just the doorman, I don't know, whatever, the Uber driver or something, but we have to be willing to listen.
I think that's the most important thing, that when you have an interaction with someone, it's really important to have that openness, and to almost, I'm not going to say put your guard down, because I'm not saying you have to be vulnerable, but you have to just give a bit of space for that individual to come a bit closer, to open up their world to you. And again, like you said, it could be the porter, it could be the waiter, it could be the pilot. But I feel that if you do give yourself that openness, then good things come.
Absolutely. Are you in touch with any of your ex-colleagues?
Oh, definitely. I've made, I would say, a lot of people, I will tell you this about Dubai as well. And in the airline industry, it's a very fleeting place to live. So a lot of people come and go, and you meet a lot of people who you think they're friends, but are there just to serve a purpose. So there is that element of self-interest as well. And I learned that the hard way, because I think living in Cyprus, you don't really get that. You have your family, you've got your close friends from school, and you're in this like security of love, understanding that I've got your back, you've got my back. Like, it's understandable, we're friends. Whereas I went to Dubai having that state of mind that, oh, we're friends now. Do you need something? I'm here for you. But I realized a lot of people were just very self-interested. So that taught me a lot. But having said that, I've got a couple of friends. I could say I can count them on one hand, probably about 3 girls that we're still friends, we still talk, and actually one of them has christened my daughter as well.
Oh, that is beautiful. Yeah. And it's never about quantity, it's always about quality. We don't need thousands of friends, we need good friends, people that we can rely on, and people that we can call in the middle of the night. Now, a little bit of travel, because we're already quite, time flies, but I want to talk, did you have a favorite destination? And from outside of flying, when you traveled, what did you like most?
So, favorite destinations, I would say I love Cape Town as a city.
Oh, again, everybody loves Cape Town.
Don't you? Have
I
you?
love Cape
Oh,
Town.
okay. I
I
was going to
do.
say
I absolutely adore Cape Town. Yes,
it's a magical city, isn't it? There's
it
something
is.
about it, that beauty of the mountains and the sea. And I love South African people in general.
Yes.
A couple of my friends are South African. They have this calmness about them. Yeah, there's just something about that city that I love a lot. And I also love Rio
Mm-hmm.
in Brazil because I feel it has a similar
It
vibe in,
does. Yeah. Mountains and sea.
yes. And again, the people are so chilled and open. So what I tried to do is that despite the trips that I did with Emirates, when I had time off, I would spend them traveling with my family and basically my parents and my brother. And I think one thing that made me proud was that my parents gave me a lot growing up. They put me through private schools, they sent me to uni, and I felt that those trips were my way of saying thank you for all these years. And it was our time to connect as a family. And the fact that I could give them that made me so full in my heart to know that we're at this new place together, we're exploring, we're having fun. And yeah, I think that was one of the best things about that job because you got to travel, but then I was able to also travel with my family because being an air hostess can be very lonely as well.
Oh, yes. Like being a tour guide. We had a lot of people who actually ended up being alcoholics or I don't know what,
Wow.
because, the thing about it is that you're in the limelight in the cabin. You're the person that everybody looks at. But then you get to your hotel room and you're alone.
Yeah, you're exactly right about that. And I was lucky because I made friends at uni and they lived all over. So most places I was lucky that, oh, I'm in Hong Kong, I'm going to message my friend, or I'm in Singapore. But in some cases, I didn't know anyone. And I can understand why some people might fall into that trap of just feeling alone in all the noise because it's such a noisy job. Yet you can be alone. You could just stay in your hotel room and not want to go out and do anything. So there could be that fine line there.
Did you explore? I mean, did you try whenever you went to a destination? You never stayed in your hotel room much?
Oh no,
You
no.
don't look like somebody who stayed in the hotel room much.
No, no. Again, like I said, I went at 22, a single girl, you know, who was just ready to explore, to meet people, to try foods, and the good thing with Emirates is that you don't go to the same place once. So for example, I've been to Bangkok 40 times
Oh,
because it
wow.
shows you on your app that it was then a joke. It was a running joke with my grandmother because she'd call me and she would say, Bais Palestokos. Like, oh, you're going to your village again,
Yes.
because you go there so often. So even somewhere like Bangkok, which I would try and do something different each
Yeah.
time, or at least if I knew I would have like favorite things to do. There's nothing like getting a beautiful massage if I
Yeah.
felt like I just wanted to relax and give myself me time, as you can imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, tell me, 5 years, I think a little bit more than 5 years. I think it's quite a lot in Emirates because I think the average they don't stay so long, the flight attendants at Emirates, from what I know. I know from other airlines, they stay 50 years, but that's a different story. Why did you stop?
I think that in life, our gut tells us when we're ready for something else.
Mm-hmm.
And after 5 years, I felt that I got everything that I could have gotten from this job. The experience, the travel. Yeah, I gave it my all. First impression about being a cabin crew and then trying to transition. So I struggled a bit at the start with applying for jobs because I felt that people didn't take it seriously enough, that they didn't really understand that, well, actually, I've worked in cabins with 30 different nationalities. We've dealt with the most serious emergency situations while still serving individuals, multitasking to the
Mm-hmm.
max.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was very difficult at the start where it came to just applying for jobs, but I was persistent.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a job in a law firm / corporate service provider. So this is where I am till this day. And I stayed in Dubai for another year and a half doing business development. So I actually did business development / sales for them for 6 years. And then I fully moved into their marketing team this year.
So that was the same company that you're working for now. Oh, I see. That's interesting. So that sort of helped you being transferred to Cyprus.
What was great was that up until I went on maternity leave, the job still allowed me to travel because I looked after clients in the Middle East and Africa. So that was my region. So I still, at one point, actually, Elizabeth, after I left Emirates, I was traveling more.
Oh, wow.
In this job.
I'm sure you didn't mind.
I wasn't complaining. So I got to discover the Gulf a bit better, which I didn't really get to travel so much with Emirates.
Yeah, amazing. I forgot to ask you something. You see, I never have a script. I just talk here. But the one thing that I did want to ask you before, because we had actually finished about your years at Emirates, but you were mentioning emergencies. Did you have a difficult, what was your worst situation? Did you ever have a moment where you thought, oh no, what happens now?
There had been a few moments. And I think looking back, I realized that Emirates trains you so well that you do keep your cool and you're able to handle the situation. So you're taught to deal with smoke and fire. So at one point, I'm in the cabin and I see a notification on one of the doors that there's smoke in one of the toilets. Now, I know in my mind that it only takes up to 90 seconds for the aircraft to be up in flames and gone.
Oh, no.
So in that moment, you just are able to just go into that mode of, right, fire extinguisher, and I'm out, I'm going. This is it. I know what to do. If there's a fire in there, I will. Luckily, it was someone who was spraying deodorant and activated the smoke detector.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. But the first moment must be frightening.
Of course. But this is what's great. You're so well equipped that with severe turbulence, we've had really extreme turbulence where people have actually flown up in the air as well. At that point, you're thinking, okay, I trust the pilot. I trust what's happening right now. But you're human as well. So there's an element of fear.
Of course. Fear is, we, as you know, you're a psychologist. We have we're born with two fears. And one of them is the fear of the loud noises. And the other one is the fear of falling. So, when you're in a plane, the chances that you're going to fall, that's a natural fear. But I think we could end this. I'm going to have to end this here. But I think one thing that you can agree with me is that flying is the safest and most comfortable way of transport.
You've definitely said it in the exact same words, that most people don't realize that, but really, it really is super safe. And the fact that you're with people who are there and know what they're doing. I'd like to think that people who are even scared, if they put that in their minds and think that, well, you know what, first I'm on the safest mode of traveling and the individuals around me know what they're doing, I feel a little bit better. And that's one thing I always try to tell passengers who are super scared, we know what we're doing. The pilot knows what he's doing. So you can just try and sit, relax, watch a movie, and we're here if you need anything.
I think we couldn't end this on a better note. Very, very beautiful. You are amazing. Thank you so much for being on Most Memorable Journeys, Andrea Charalambous.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you.
If you enjoy my podcast, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. You will find all the information in the show notes.